Greetings and welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast powered by our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation. Alongside Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN, I am Darren Kinnard. And Matty, much has transpired since we last met here on the podcast forum.
Yes.
And we have seen a lot of basketball, and we have seen a lot of great basketball.
Yeah.
Some great finishes, just great tournaments, great drama. We've seen the gambit.
Yeah, I mean, great basketball, like you said. Great drama, again, as you said. I'm just going to be a parrot over here, I guess. It felt like we were in a sitcom a lot of times. Not a sitcom so much as, like a One Tree Hill drama, something like that, it was always something at every single turn. And thankfully, even the drama kind of turned into a feel-good story at the end.
Yeah, and that drama, of course, was at the championship game of the Cecilville Holiday Tournament, Waltonville and Goreville, and Cole Tripp from Goreville, the senior, he is definitely the straw that stirs the drink for the Black Cats. He tried to take a charge early in the third quarter, and then he hit his head, and immediately. I was there at that baseline where he was shooting, and immediately his teammates started yelling for help. And your first reaction is you've seen that sometimes when maybe somebody's leg is not pointed in the right direction, and things like that. But then you really saw quickly that it was not that type of injury. Cole started seizing on the floor, and it was I've done this a long time, and it was certainly the scariest circumstance that I have seen in person. The only thing I could relate it to was the SIU playoff game at Delaware when Joel Sambursky got knocked out, and they took his face mask off, and he is on the stretcher, and they hauled him off, and but his helmet was still on, and but again, that's the only thing that has been even remotely close to this, and just to see. Everybody, the way everybody reacted, the emotions from both teams. You've got a gym full of fans, and I made this comment at the time. 30 seconds before this, every play, every call, everything is gritty. It's a championship game, and then after that, none of it mattered.
Right. Exactly.
None of it mattered.
And this isn't necessarily, one of those knockdown, drag-out, brawl rivalry games,
No.
It was just two of the best teams in 1A in the area, and they sat there and looked at each other before the game and said, we might see you in a sectional title game. We might see you down the road here and when it matters, so let's, make sure we leave our mark here, make sure you know that you should be afraid of us, basically. And then at the end of it all, these kids, they're kids. People forget that sometimes. These are kids. And they reacted the way you would expect kids to react. And great to see them all, come together that way. But it was scary not just for Cole, but for both the teammates and the opposition as well. And
again, and it's not just limited. The adults were shook too,
that too.
And that includes the coaching staff, the referees.
Yeah.
I've talked to them, and honestly, it was Sunday was kind of weird for me. And again, this isn't about me, but it's just about it affects everybody. And then you started seeing some of the his mom was posting on social media some updates, and the initial update was very positive, and then the second update was just tremendous news that we're sitting home, and then Coach Tripp posts the picture of him at practice, and to me that was incredible. And then he's at the game Monday night when they resumed it in the third quarter, and just it's just truly. It's incredible. It's obviously a miracle.
Yeah.
Just the fact that things were going south in a hurry, and to see him back on the bench, less than 48 hours later, and rooting his team on, and he's going to be back soon.
Yeah.
And that's it's just tremendous, and being able to see the game, and you weren't sure how either team was going to come out.
Exactly.
Waltonville. They're great. I mean, they're a great 1A team, and they came out and took care of their business, and And again, Goreville is going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's a really good team that is really good when Cole's in the lineup and doing things.
Well, you see what was happening before everything happened. They were up by 11, and I know it was kind of back and forth in the first quarter a little bit, but walking into halftime, it was like, man, this really looks like it's Goreville's game to lose. But then when you come back Monday, it's a totally different situation. So even though you have an 11-point handicap, clearly it doesn't matter when you're up against a team like Waltonville, especially when just so much has happened in between.
Right. And again, it just lends it to perspective.
Yeah.
Again, this is what we do. We cover it. We talk about it. We do all these things. We see it every Friday night, every Saturday night, every other night that's played. It is not the end of the earth if your team wins or loses,
right,
or the greatest thing in the earth if your team wins or loses. And it's unfortunate that it takes a situation like this that makes you realize, okay, maybe that bad call in the third quarter is not really that big of a deal.
Right. Well, and I mean, Goreville's fans are fantastic, and that they are known for, being on their team's side so much. But I think for them also, it puts this really in perspective here. And I'm sure there's going to be out there every game fighting for their team in the stands. But I think this will also, again, put things in perspective.
Look, I mean, and again, at the end of the day, you're out there to play, and just because it was a feel-good story, that doesn't mean that Todd Tripp was going to let up
exactly,
in the game. And, he coached his kids hard. He got after the referees hard. That's what Todd Tripp does.
Exactly.
And again, but the bigger picture, is that. And again, we saw numerous tournaments. I think I counted up more than 500 scores for the whole for that whole 4 or 5 day span. You had a front row seat at the Duster Thomas.
Yeah.
That was highly entertaining as well.
Well, without a doubt, the whole tournament was fantastic. And doing it mostly for Murfreesboro, I didn't stick around for the championship game because by that point I was exhausted, as most teams and broadcasters were. But if I had the day off the next day, I definitely would have stuck around. But circumstances, I said, I'm getting out of here. But to see just how competitive it was at the end, and this felt like a true rivalry game, and it has built itself into a rivalry game for the past several years now. For them to meet in the championship game here, Pinckneyville and Benton, it was a really good game. And then Dr. Tedeschi, of course, gets that call with less than a second to go, does what star players do, and then Pinckneyville tried with half a second left, but come up short, and Ben earned that win right there.
Now, this brings up a discussion point, and it's not necessarily about the end of this game, but we hear a lot. The officials should swallow the officials, or they should swallow their whistles and let the players decide the game. And Les Winkler, good friend of ours, he's always said, if they swallow their whistles, they are potentially affecting the outcome
Correct.
of the game. So, you call the game the way it's supposed to be called, no matter what the time is on the clock. And because I know there were those upset going, well, you can't call that foul 75 feet from the basket or whatever.
Right.
It was a foul.
It was. I was more shocked at the fact that they called it a shooting foul, honestly. I looked at it and said it was, but I thought it might be on the floor kind of, because depending on the angle you look at it, kind of tough to tell that, yes, the shot was affected, but to me it looked almost like a foul on the floor. But they call it a shooting foul, and Dr. Tedeschi gets his opportunities. You ask the Benton fans, they all say that, well, that was the first time that we got any help all night long. You're playing at Pinckneyville, as well, and just the fact that the home team is always maybe going to get a call here or there. But you know what? That was the right call at that moment in time.
When you go to games and you don't have a dog in the fight,
oh yeah,
it looks so much different.
You're right, completely.
So much different. And I catch myself at home when I'm watching my teams on TV and just screaming, and I'm like, oh my, I've turned into that guy. But again, it boils down to a foul is a foul. I don't care if it's the first quarter or the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you don't want to see a ticky-tack.
Right.
You don't see that. But at the end of the day, what it also boils down to is, again, And I also have had coaches say this in the past. It's not about that one call. There are so many other plays, even so many other calls throughout the game. It's not one call that changes the game. Now, that's magnified because Docker goes and hits all three, which, first of all, even the best free throw shooters, in the planet, that's not automatic to go up there in that situation and knock down all three. But just that clutch gene kicks in and he does. And then, here's the other part is that last second effort by Pinckneyville almost went in.
Almost.
And they had waved it off, and rightfully so. With 0.5 of a second, there's no, it's pretty much a tip. It's not a any other type of deal. Had that gone in,
oh my gosh,
and they waved that off on top of that, I don't even want to think about what might have transpired.
Well, and when you get back to that foul, though, the easy thing is, and we could say this in hindsight, 2020 and everything, but the easy thing to tell the kids is don't get in that guy's way.
Sure.
I get that it was kind of a scramble down there at the end. I think some guys didn't even realize that Tedeschi had it until he'd already shot it. But you got to stay out of everybody's way at that point because they're going to try to get the rebound. That they're going to try and take the shot. They're all the way at the other end, but they're still going to try because that's the only way that they can win at that point. And so you got to just stay out of the way. And Coach Lauer and Coach Weinmiller and all the other coaches in the area, they're telling their kids that every single on Tuesday. That's what happened at practice. They said, hey, did you see what happened in that game? That's why we stay away from people on the rebound.
The other part is, had Pinckneyville hit free throws, that's a non-factor.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of a long time ago. I covered a regional final, and Team A, who had a big lead in the fourth quarter, went 1 for 10 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter. Ends up getting beat late.
Yeah.
And on my way to the car, I got a fan of Team A saying, you be sure and show how we got screwed tonight. How those refs screwed us, and my exact response was, did they go 1 for 10 from the line in the fourth quarter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, these are high school kids. We see college kids. We see pros miss free throws. It's not that you expect that, but again, if you do what you can, then you take out the officiating part of it. That doesn't even become a factor in the end.
Exactly, and we saw kind of the flip in the third place game for Murfreesboro Meridian at the Duster, in that just like Pinckneyville, they missed a lot of free throws there at the end of the game. Murfreesboro able to hold on in spite of the fact that their best free throw shooter, Cade Brooks, goes to the line and misses 5 shots in a row. And by the fourth shot, he's throwing his hands up saying, what is going on?
Right.
I don't get it, because he knows he's a good one, and he probably this week has probably been working on free throws all week long. Doesn't matter all the other things that he may have done well or wrong at the tournament. That was the lasting impression for him in that tournament of, we nearly lost the game. Murfreesboro nearly lost the game because of the fact that he missed 5 shots. Now, you hold on, you win by 3, but you sit there and feel like we could have won by 8 because of the fact that your best free throw shooter goes to the line and misses all 5. That's almost unheard of.
Well, and it's you hear about hitting being contagious, and sometimes lack of hitting is contagious. Same thing with shooting.
Yeah.
And again, especially if you're going up there with 2 free throws and you miss the first in a pressure situation,
Yep.
I would love to see what the percentages are. And I'm sure somebody has done a study.
I'm sure
of what the percentages of the second make is in a pressure situation. You'd have to define what that is, but it's just fascinating to me because again, we see pros miss it, so it's not like hey. We should be holding these high school kids to a different standard because they missed a free throw. It happens.
Yeah.
It's part of the game, and that's why you play.
Yeah, well, and I mean, on day 4 of a tournament, legs come into it. You don't want to use that. Coaches don't want to use it because that's an excuse, but it's the truth. You played 4 games in 3 or 4 days. Yeah, your kids are going to be a little bit tired, and when it comes down to crunch time in that final game, they might miss a shot that they normally don't miss, and that's okay. They learn from it, and it's better that it happened at this point rather than, say, the regional final or something like that.
Yeah, and and again, this is a small part and parcel of the 4 or 5 days, and it was kind of like that everywhere. I mean, you go Centralia. Centralia wins their own holiday tournament, the 81st, on a buzzer beater by a freshman. He's pretty good, Archie Guai, who ended up getting tournament MVP. First freshman MVP in the history of the tournament. He had 25 in the title game winner with like 1 second left, essentially a buzzer beater. Just dramatics. And that's why we watch.
Yeah, 81 years is how long that tournament's been going on. So we're talking World War II. So, and never has a freshman won before this year. So congratulations to him. That's great. We saw him do great things on the football field, and clearly the basketball court is also somewhere he's going to thrive. The next couple of years, just get used to saying Guai. That's why I had to text you on Sunday night and said, please send me the phonetic spell or pronunciation. And because I was like, I'm going to have to say this. I can't avoid talking about Archie here. And so, but a great job by him. And, I mean, that's what you want at the end of these tournaments more than anything. You want it to go down to the last second. And thankfully, a lot of these tournaments this year did go down to the last second.
Yeah, again, great drama throughout. And, looking at, some of the other tournaments and finishes, Cairo goes to Cobden and takes care of business, and they did so in dominant fashion. They beat Johnson City handily in the title game. And the thing about about that tournament in Cairo is they ended up with their young guy who ends up the champions, Jaquan McAllister.
Yeah,
he had 27 in the title game. You saw him at DuQuoin.
Yeah.
He was MVP. He's a freshman.
Yeah, and he was coming off the bench last time I saw him. So I don't know if he's worked his way into the starting lineup. I'll be finding out on Tuesday because that's when Murfreesboro plays him. And I was just kind of shocked because, again, doing a little bit of research on the upcoming opponent for the Red Devils, and they're sitting at 9 wins. Cairo has been building that program for a long time, and you got guys like Vance Tuck and their names are escaping me right now, but Vance Tuck is one that sticks out to me big time, and a couple other guys, Pirtle, along with others that have been building that program for several years now, and I've had the pleasure of seeing them every single year for the past 4 years and see them grow from freshmen to seniors or now juniors perhaps, and see them just come along. And that Cairo program has taken leaps and bounds since 4 years ago. And you go to the Cobden tournament, and maybe it's not the highest competition, but you come out the champion. You've got 9 wins. Cairo is starting to knock on some people's doors and say, hey, we're right here and we're ready to take you on.
And again, we talked. There's a ton of tournaments, and that just going kind of down the list. And we saw a couple tournaments where it was the same story, different day. El Dorado ends up with a 4-time champion with Heron taking care of Carterville. And again, we talked about it before this about Kyrese Lukens. Heron was the number 1 seed, but they'd kind of been getting on a roll going in, and until somebody beats them, and the fact they have Kyrese Lukens on their team, they were going to be the favorites and to win. And then they did it. And then, Carterville's leading going to the 4th, and then Kyrese goes nuts.
Yeah.
And he'd struggled most of the game, gets 14 of his 19 in the fourth quarter when it's winning time.
Yeah.
And that's what that dude is.
Well, and 6 of those 14 came from the same spot about 30 seconds apart from each other also. Just he was unconscious. He did what stars are supposed to do. And so good on Kyrese and the Heron Tigers to do that. They're looking really strong right now. They're 2-0 in the conference for the Ohio division. And they had to go through a little bit of Ohio division gauntlet there at the end of the tournament. Right. They had to go through Harrisburg in the semifinal, and then later that day play Carterville. And the day before, they played Anna Jonesboro, and Anna Jonesboro actually played them pretty well in that second-round matchup, too.
And you mentioned the Ohio is just going to be a dogfight.
It is.
Murfreesboro was the only team that wasn't there. They're over battling, everybody else in the planet at
They played number 10 Carlisle.
At the Duster, and so... Heron beats Harrisburg and Carterville. Tonight, you've got Carterville going to Harrisburg.
Yeah.
That's one of those that, and again, the team that has struggled a bit, Massac County, ended up winning the 5th place game.
Right.
But I don't think anybody wants to face Joe Hosman down the stretch. So
No.
there are no gimmies each night in the river.
Yeah, well, Massac,
especially the Ohio side.
You're right, exactly. But the Massac team is young, and they're getting things figured out. And that fifth place, that fifth place game, that winning fifth place, I should say, is going to be a building block for that entire team. And Joe says, okay, now you know how to win. You went out there and took care of business. It wasn't the championship, but you still ended up number 5 out of 16 teams. That's pretty darn good right there. And you just go from there. Come February, that Massac team is going to be scary. Murfreesboro sees them January 31st. That's basically February. They're going to be scary for everybody. And, they may not end up with the record that they want to see, but they're probably going to be playing spoiler to a bunch of people in February and then walking to the regional. They're the same old Massac County.
Well, and then we're going to talk about seedings coming up, and that's a team that's not going to be seeded great.
No.
But it's certainly a team that as a 6, 7, 8 seed, whatever,
exactly,
they could make some noise. Back to the same song, different day. The Benton Rangerette Christmas Classic, which has turned into one of the top girls tournaments, and especially in the South and really the South half of the state.
Yeah.
The championship game, Mount Vernon Lady Rams won their 4th straight as they beat Civic Memorial. This was a matchup of 2 top 5 teams ranked in 3A, and the Lady Rams survived a physical. This was a knockdown drag out, and the Lady Rams survived, and they win their 4th straight. A couple of seniors, Kamari Pollard and Milena Zadelis, really carried the mail for them, but it was, again, an overall great tournament, especially semifinals and finals.
Right, and, the fact that, as you mentioned, a top 5 matchup, 2 top 5 teams basically in 3A going head-to-head in a holiday tournament final, that's what a lot of holiday tournaments were built to do, to create a matchup like that where you're going to see. This will be a sectional title game if you make it to the championship game.
Right.
This will be a super sectional game. That's what the Carbondale Holiday Tournament was for those 50-some years before it unfortunately disbanded. These tournaments are built to say, all right, we're about a month into the season. If you get to the title game, you're probably going to get the experience of a big postseason game, not just a regional final, sectional title, super sectional, maybe even a state final type of game. And it's such great experience for these kids.
And that 3rd place game there was a matchup of top 8 ranked teams in 2A as Carlisle and Vienna. And I think the team that they're going to come away, they're going to come away with 2 losses from the week. Mm-hmm. But I think the Vienna Lady Eagles showed some things, and if nothing else, they showed themselves that, hey, we definitely can compete. Yeah. They had Mount Vernon down 9 in the semis with 3.5 to play.
I remember that, yeah.
And then they lose by 1 to Carlisle, who is, in top 5 in the state, and had only lost to Bree Central, who is number 1.
Right.
So that's a team. That's a sectional game, potentially.
Yeah.
I think that the Vienna Lady Eagles walk away from Benton, even though 4th is not what they wanted, they can certainly hang their hat on, look, we competed with a top 5 team in 3A. We lost by 1 in the 3rd place game to a top 5 team in 2A. We're here.
Right. Well, and I'll go back to the experience comment that I made also about Mount Vernon going ahead to experience that type of game. Vienna's not going to lose a lot of games this year. Those 2 losses are very valuable experience for Ava Rush and Summer Daubert and Rick Metcalf's crew over there, just in the fact that, to have 2 come so close together. A loss will teach you a bunch, but then you'll go back to your winning ways. Everything feels fine. Hey, we just took 2 losses. Rick Metcalf and the crew are over there saying, we can't let that happen again. We can't let 2 losses happen that close together ever again, or else we're going to be in big trouble. So it's a good experience in that way as well. A lot of these teams are taking these holiday tournaments and saying, hey, we got some good experience even in the losses.
Yeah, and I don't know their exact schedule down the stretch, but they're certainly not going to see anybody like that in the conference. They're not going to see that level of play until they get to a sectional.
Right.
And it's going to be against somebody from that other subsectional, which is absolutely murderer's row with Nashville, Carlisle, Mater Dei, Bree Central. 2 of those 4 teams are going to make it out of there, and so you're going to have to beat somebody of that ilk just to get to the sectional final where you're probably going to see the other one.
Right, exactly. And at least you saw Carlisle, so if you see them again, you already kind of know what you're in for. Nashville and Berea Central, as you mentioned, man, they're just so good. So maybe unfortunate for them that they didn't see those two teams, but you saw a caliber team like that. And you're of that level as well if we're talking about Vienna as well. So it's definitely something that it will end up helping in the end. Might lead Vienna deeper than what they would have if they didn't have that experience.
No question. And then the other girls tournament, which is spectacular over at Mascoutah. Berea Central ends up in the title game. They beat Nashville in the semis. Nashville gets third. And I believe Berea Central lost to Alton, who's a state-ranked team in 4A.
Yeah.
And then, Nashville beats O'Fallon, who's the defending 4A champs.
Right.
Or just a team that's had tremendous success. And again, it's a 4A team. So again, even in a loss and, whether it's the semis, finals, and those are great experiences for those clubs. And again, it just shows what a murderer's row that other side of the subsectional is.
Yeah, because again, they're competing with 4A teams. So, they've got that experience under there. And I'll just keep going back to that because when it comes down to it, I mean, these coaches want these tournaments for the experience. And so everybody, I think, got a big boost from these tournaments. The teams that are not playing tonight or tomorrow, they get a little bit of extra rest, but they also get to kind of mentally process everything as well.
Right.
If you're going tonight or tomorrow, all right, well, you're off to the races, but a lot of those also finished instead of like Monday this week, like Duster Thomas and the Ben Rangerette did. A lot of those finished last Saturday, so they kind of still get the benefit.
Yeah, and there's some games. I mean, there's some bigger games tonight. There's not a lot on the schedule, but there are some quality games. Quality games tomorrow night, and then, of course, with the weather that's moving in, that may be the last we see for a little bit anyway, because if it gets as bad as some of the forecasters are calling for, half inch of ice in much of southern Illinois, and the temperature's not going anywhere but down.
Right.
That's not going to go anywhere for a while, and so this basketball that we see the next couple of nights may be it for a little while.
Right. Well, and I've made the comment a little bit as well that some of the games for tomorrow may not even happen because of when the weather comes in per se.
See
so
what the timing is.
Like Marion goes to Centralia. Does Marion and Centralia say that's an hour 15 bus ride? Do we take that risk with the kids going back at, say, 10-15.
I wonder if you'll see those games moved up.
Right.
I think they'll still play.
Yeah, I think so as well. That was a thing that had been brought up when I said that to someone else, and they said, well, they'll probably move it up. And I was, yeah, you're probably right about that, but it's all going to be taken into consideration because we're talking about late Saturday, early Sunday. Do you really want to be on a bus at that point in time, risking that while being on a bus for a full hour? That's probably not going to be the right decision.
And then the other factor that comes in, we just get through all these tournaments, and we've talked a lot about how many tournaments there are in Illinois. We're starting to see the brackets and the pairings come out for all the midwinter tournaments, which are just around the corner, and we just grind those tournaments.
Yeah, keep on churning them out, basically. I mean, I saw one come out, and so then I said, let me go ahead and check with the Sparta Midwinter since that's where I'll be. Right. Haven't heard anything yet, but that looks like a great tournament. But these midwinters are kind of your last gasp of tournaments before the state tournament, thankfully, and you get a little bit more normalcy for about a month, and then it's on to the state tournament, like I said. And
again, I think that there is a tournament every week, except for the final week before the postseason. And so I think the Chester girls midwinter is scheduled for next week, but that looks perhaps in jeopardy. But and then we get into the midwinters is that the tournament rolls on. If you missed anything from the holiday tournaments, we have the Holiday Tournament Central posted on River Radio Sports Central. It's got all the scores from each day, from each tournament. You can go there and check that out as well. So that's going to do it for this edition of the River Radio Sports Central podcast. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, wherever that is, wherever you watch it. We thank our friends at NovaCare Rehabilitation for sponsoring us. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kinnard. Have a great week, everybody, and stay safe and warm in this wintry mess.